Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that can seriously level up your English game, especially if you're aiming for, those higher scores on tests like IELTS.
Mm-hmm.
We're specifically looking at a source called Mastering C2 English Vocabulary for IELTS Success. It gives us this fantastic list of high-level words, you kind of often linked with C2 proficiency.
That's right. And the core idea in this source, the premise really, is that building up this kind of advanced vocabulary isn't just like an academic thing.
Right.
It's directly tied to getting bands 7.0 and above in IELTS. And as they put it, it unlocks better opportunities.
And they actually explain why, which I think is key. It's not just about knowing big words for the sake of it.
Exactly.
A richer vocabulary improves your understanding, your comprehension in listening and reading, because you get more complex language.
Yeah, you pick up on the nuances. And it drastically boosts the quality and sophistication of your writing.
Oh, definitely. And it gives you that precision, that flexibility you need for more fluent, more nuanced expression when you're speaking too.
But think of it like getting a more precise set of tools,
Yeah.
You can describe things, argue points, understand complicated ideas with much greater accuracy and impact than if you just stick to everyday words.
Absolutely. So our mission here in this deep dive is to go through this list the source gives us. We'll break down what the words mean, look at examples from the source to see how they work.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe more importantly, we're going to dig into why each word really matters at this C2 level. Like, what specific power or nuance does it add?
Yeah, what makes it essential for that high-level communication, for those higher scores the source is talking about?
Exactly. It's a challenging list, no doubt. But these are words that genuinely expand how you can express yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's dive in. So the source gives us a couple of lists of words. We're going to look at them, but maybe instead of just running down the list exactly as it's written,
right,
maybe we could group some of them by theme, perhaps, or how they're used. I think that might help us see the different kinds of sophisticated language we're talking about.
That's a great idea. Grouping can definitely reveal patterns, help things click, related concepts stick together better.
Okay, cool. So let's start with maybe some words that describe things that are difficult, like difficult problems or things that are hard to understand, or maybe just things that don't quite fit the normal pattern.
Excellent. A perfect word to kick off that group is conundrum.
Yes, conundrum. The source defines it as a confusing and difficult problem or question. So what makes this different from just saying a problem?
Well, it carries this sense of intricacy, doesn't it? Something puzzling that needs careful thought to untangle.
Mm-hmm.
It really captures that specific mental wrestle, that feeling of being stumped by something with layers.
Like the examples they give. Solving this math problem was a conundrum, or the ethical one, the ethical conundrum of cloning. You can immediately see how conundrum suggests more complexity, maybe even a moral angle. That problem just doesn't quite hit.
Exactly. Using it shows you can pinpoint and label these complex challenges precisely. That's valuable in writing or speaking.
Okay. From difficult problems, let's shift to things that are difficult to understand. The source gives us inscrutable.
Right, inscrutable. Difficult to understand or interpret. This one feels a bit mysterious.
Yeah, it does.
It implies something where the meaning is hidden or maybe deliberately obscure. It's not just complicated, it's baffling, maybe even on purpose.
Like the politician's motives were inscrutable. No one knew what he was really after. Or the expression on his face was inscrutable. Hard to tell if he was happy or sad. It suggests a lack of transparency, right?
Absolutely. It's perfect for analyzing situations or characters or even abstract ideas where the real meaning is just hard to grasp, adds depth.
Okay.
And actually closely related is enigma.
Enigma, defined as a person, thing, or situation that is mysterious, puzzling, or difficult to understand.
Okay, so how's that different from inscrutable? They sound pretty similar.
Good question. There's overlap, for sure. But inscrutable is usually an adjective describing something you're trying to figure out, a motive, an expression, a text that's hard to penetrate.
Right.
Enigma, on the other hand, is usually a noun. It is the mysterious thing itself. It's the puzzle.
Ah, I see. So the politician had an inscrutable expression describing the expression versus the politician's sudden resignation was an enigma. The resignation is the mystery.
Precisely. And the source's examples show this. The disappearance of the plane remains an enigma. The artist's abstract painting was an enigma. The sudden change in the CEO's behavior was an enigma. Using enigma lets you actually name the mystery.
Got it. Okay, shifting slightly within this difficult things group, we have aberration.
Aberration. a departure from what is normal, usual, or expected. So this describes something that's out of the ordinary, a deviation. This doesn't sound necessarily negative, though. Just weird or unexpected.
Exactly.
Like the sudden rain in the middle of summer was an aberration, or the athlete's poor performance was an aberration from his usual record. The source also mentions the politician's stance was an aberration from his party's platform.
Right. It's a really useful word when you need to point out that something deviates significantly from a pattern or a norm. That comes up a lot in analytical contexts in IELTS. It lets you specify that deviation, not just vaguely say something was unusual.
Okay. And one more in this group. Nonplussed.
Nonplussed. Bewildered, confused, unsure how to react. This is about being sort of taken aback, really unsure what to say or do next.
The examples really capture that moment of being stumped, don't they? He was nonplussed by her unexpected confession. The teacher was nonplussed when the student asked a question she couldn't answer. She was left feeling nonplussed. It's that feeling of just bewildered surprise.
It's a very specific emotional and mental state. Using nonplussed is way more descriptive than just saying someone was confused or surprised. It gets that extra layer of not knowing how to respond.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that's a good set of words for describing difficult concepts, mysteries, deviations, and that feeling of confusion. Let's maybe move to another group. How about words related to negative actions, traits, or criticism? There seem to be quite a few of those.
Indeed. A powerful one to start that off is nefarious.
Nefarious. Wicked or criminal? Ooh, this one sounds genuinely bad, like proper villain stuff.
It does, doesn't it? It suggests a kind of inherent or calculated evil, not just general badness or even just being illegal. It carries a definite layer of moral judgment.
Which the examples show: the nefarious plot of the villains, the nefarious actions of the dictator, the thieves had a nefarious plan. Using nefarious really adds that strong sense of deliberate evil intent.
Exactly. Now, let's look at words for complaining or negative attitudes. The source gives us querulous.
Querulous. Yeah, the source lists this twice with slightly different definitions, but they both point towards complaining or whining. One says in a petulant manner, the other just fretful. The examples are pretty consistent, though. The querulous customer complained. The querulous child whined. The querulous tone of her voice. It seems to mean complaining in that really annoying, often sort of petty way.
Yes, that's the key nuance. It's not just complaining, it's a specific type, irritable, fretful, often kind of high-pitched or whiny sounding.
Right.
Using querulous lets you critique or describe that particular unpleasant behavior very precisely.
And related to causing annoyance, there's vexatious.
Vexatious, causing annoyance, frustration, or worry. This describes something that is troublesome or irritating, and often it's kind of persistent.
Yeah, the examples capture that feeling of being bothered. The vexatious delay, the vexatious noise, the vexatious behavior. You can almost feel the irritation in the word itself.
It conveys a specific kind of negative experience, that feeling of frustration or irritation. It's a strong adjective for detailing problems or difficulties that are actively bothersome.
Okay. Now, what about criticism? The source includes disparage.
Disparage. Regard or represent as being of little worth, belittle. So this means talking about someone or something in a way that makes them seem unimportant or bad.
Right. It feels like actively trying to lower someone's value or reputation. The examples are clear. The critic's review disparaged the movie. The boss's constant criticism and disparagement. The politician's opponent disparaged his record.
It's a specific form of criticism, really aimed at belittling or devaluing. It's more pointed than just saying criticize. It implies that intent to undermine worth.
Okay.
For instance, the source gives an example sentence completion. The politician's behavior led to widespread criticism. Now, several negative words might fit, but if the behavior involved actively tearing down opponents...
Then disparagement, the noun, or maybe. Let's talk about vituperate then.
Yeah.
That's also in the source and sounds like an even stronger kind of criticism.
It is, vituperate. To criticize or berate harshly, to use abusive language towards. This is criticism that's really severe, often angry and abusive.
So disparage is more like belittling, putting down, and vituperate is harsh, abusive criticism, like shouting insults.
Exactly. Vituperate implies a higher intensity, often involving insults or really harsh language. The source's examples show this. The politician vituperated his opponent. He vituperated his boss in a scathing email. Her mother-in-law would often vituperate her cooking.
Ouch.
Yeah, and this is where that fill in the blank, the politician's behavior, could strongly point to vituperative, the adjective describing the behavior, or the act of vituperation itself, depending on the context.
That distinction is really useful, isn't it? Especially for IELTS writing, choosing the word that perfectly nails the type of criticism.
Absolutely, it demonstrates precision. Now, speaking of negativity, let's look at stubbornness or rigidity. The source gives us both intransigent and obdurate.
It sounds very similar. Intransigent, stubborn, unwilling to compromise, and obdurate. Stubborn, unyielding, resistant to persuasion. What's the difference?
They are very close synonyms, true. Often, intransigent is used more for refusing to change views or actions, especially in negotiations or arguments. A political stance might be intransigent.
Okay.
Obdurate also means stubborn, but it can sometimes carry a slightly stronger connotation of hardened resistance, maybe even against moral influence or pity. Think of someone with a hard heart, or someone who just won't yield despite overwhelming evidence or pleas.
So intransigent is more about sticking to a fixed position, maybe in a debate, while obdurate might imply a kind of hardened unresponsiveness, almost emotional.
Yes, that's a pretty good way to think about the nuance. The source's examples for intransigent. The Union leaders were intransigent. He remained intransigent in his belief. For obdurate, the obdurate child, the obdurate boss, the obdurate defendant. They are often interchangeable, honestly, in many contexts, but knowing that subtle difference just adds to your precision. For instance, the source's example, the student's attitude towards studying. Both could fit the idea of stubborn refusal, but maybe intransigent feels slightly more natural for an unyielding attitude or position.
Okay, interesting. One more word in this sort of negative category.
Bombastic.
Bombastic. High-sounding, but with little meaning, inflated. This describes language that's overly grand, sort of pompous, and meant to impress, but actually lacks real substance.
Sounds like it applies directly to some political speeches, and the source agrees. The politician's speech was filled with bombastic rhetoric, but they also use it for art. The artist's abstract paintings, criticized for their bombastic use of color and business. The CEO's email, filled with bombastic language. It's a really useful, critical term for analyzing communication that just prioritizes sounding impressive over having genuine content. Using bombastic shows, you can identify and critique that kind of empty, inflated language.
Right.
Think of the source's example. The professor's lecture was filled with language that made it hard to follow. Bombastic fits perfectly there. It describes language that sounds important, but actually obscures the meaning.
Yeah, it's not just complex, it's complex and empty. Yeah. That's a powerful distinction to be able to make.
Definitely.
Okay, let's shift gears again. How about words that help us describe things? Quantity, presence, sounds, maybe even abstract qualities like clarity.
Sounds good. A great word for describing large quantity or variety is myriad.
Myriad, a very large number or variety. It's a concise way to say lots of or many different kinds of, but it sounds more sophisticated.
Absolutely. Using myriad instantly elevates your description when you're talking about abundance. The source's examples show how versatile it is. The city had a myriad of restaurants. The book contained a myriad of facts. The artist used a myriad of colors.
And related to quantity, but more about presence everywhere, is ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous, present, appearing, or found everywhere. Something so common it just seems to be in every single place you look.
This feels like a very modern word. Good for describing technology and global trends. The examples are spot on. Smartphones are ubiquitous. Fast food chains are ubiquitous. The internet is ubiquitous.
It's highly relevant for discussing contemporary society, absolutely. Using ubiquitous gives you a much stronger, more formal alternative to just saying very common or everywhere.
Right.
Think of the source's example sentence. The high of social media in our daily lives is undeniable. The noun form ubiquity, meaning the state of being everywhere, fits perfectly there.
Ubiquity, got it. Okay, from presence to sound, we have cacophony.
Cacophony, a harsh, discordant mixture of sounds. It's basically the opposite of harmony. It's jarring, unpleasant noise.
Yeah, the examples paint a really vivid, noisy picture. The construction site was a cacophony of drilling, hammering, shouting. The city traffic, a cacophony. The band's performance, marred by a cacophony of out-of-tune instruments.
It's such a powerful word for descriptive writing or speaking, perfect for capturing those unpleasant soundscapes. The source's example sentence, the movie's soundtrack was a fair of different sounds that clashed, clearly points to cacophony.
Definitely. Okay, how about describing something done secretively? The source gives us furtive.
Furtive, attempting to avoid notice or attention, secretive. This describes actions that are done quietly or stealthily, specifically to avoid being seen or heard.
So it adds that sense of intent. They're trying not to be noticed. The examples illustrate that. The spy's furtive movements, the teenager's furtive attempts to sneak out, the employee's furtive glance, and this links to that source example. During the meeting, he casts glances around the room. Furtive fits perfectly there, describing those quick, secret looks.
Precisely. It's a great word for adding that layer of secrecy or sneakiness when you're describing actions.
We also have limpid in this list, which feels quite different. It seems to describe clarity.
It does. Limpid. Clear, transparent, easy to understand. It's often used literally for things like water or light, but also metaphorically for ideas or communication style.
The examples show that range. Her voice was as limpid and pure as a mountain stream. The explanation was so limpid, the writer's style is limpid. It's quite a lovely way to describe clarity and purity.
It is. It's a very positive, descriptive word. Praising a writer's limpid style is much more evocative than just saying it's clear.
Okay. And to describe putting things together to compare them, we have juxtapose.
Juxtapose. To place side by side for comparison or contrast. It's specifically about putting two things next to each other to highlight their differences, or maybe their similarities.
This seems like a really useful analytical term, especially for essays.
Oh, absolutely.
The examples from the source really highlight this. The exhibit juxtaposed contemporary art with classic paintings. The author juxtaposed the protagonist's inner thoughts with her outward actions.
Yeah.
The contrast is striking when they are juxtaposed.
Right. And this directly matches that source fill in the blank. The new art exhibit will the works of a famous painter with those of a contemporary artist. Juxtapose is clearly the word needed there.
Yeah, it's essential for any writing that involves comparing and contrasting. It lets you describe the technique itself. How about pointing out the most important thing in something? That's where salient comes in, right?
Salient. Most noticeable or important. It refers to the most prominent, striking, or relevant aspect of whatever you're discussing.
So it helps you kind of cut to the chase. Highlight what really matters. The examples are the salient point of the argument, the salient feature of the new car, the salient fact in the case.
Yes, it's key for structuring arguments and analysis effectively. Saying the salient point immediately signals to your reader or listener that you're focusing on the most critical piece of information. Very valuable in structuring an essay, for example.
Makes sense. And finally, in this descriptive group, genuflect. Seems a bit specific.
Genuflect, to kneel, bow, or bend in reverence or worship. It's a specific physical action that shows respect or submission.
The examples cover different contexts. When entering the church, many people will genuflect. The athlete genuflected. She genuflected before her mentor.
Yeah, while it might not pop up in every IELTS topic, it's very precise for describing acts of physical reverence or deep respect. It adds detail if you're describing cultural practices, religious contexts, or even just symbolic actions.
Okay, good to know. So we've covered difficulties, negative stuff, and general descriptions. What about words related to change, time, or signals?
Good category. A classic word for things that don't last is ephemeral.
Ephemeral, lasting for a very short time, like fleeting or temporary.
Exactly. It adds a slightly poetic or maybe more formal tone when you're describing transience. The source's examples are quite nice. The beauty of cherry blossoms is ephemeral.
Yeah.
Also, the success of the internet startup was ephemeral, and the popularity of the latest fashion trend is ephemeral. Using ephemeral is just much more evocative than saying short-lived.
It is. The source also had an example sentence.
Right.
Wait, was it this one? The butterfly from a caterpillar. No, hang on. That one must use.
You're probably thinking of metamorphosis.
Right, let's jump to that one then. Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis. A profound change in form or nature. This isn't just any change. It's a complete transformation.
Okay, so it implies a really significant fundamental shift. The classic example is there. The butterfly undergoes a metamorphosis. But the source also applies it more broadly, like the town underwent a metamorphosis, or her experiences caused a metamorphosis in her beliefs.
Exactly. And that sentence you started, the butt of the butterfly, that perfectly illustrates metamorphosis.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful word for describing significant transformations, whether they're biological, urban, personal, societal, much stronger than just saying change.
Definitely. And related to signaling future events, we have harbinger.
Harbinger. A person or thing that announces or signals the approach of another. It's often used for signs of future events. Sometimes they're not always negative ones.
The source's examples seem to be about signs of what's coming. The first, snowfall, a harbinger of winter. The economic downturn was a harbinger of the recession. The sudden drop in the stock market, a harbinger of the financial crisis.
It's a slightly more formal or even literary term for a sign or signal. It can add a sense of foresight or perhaps inevitability, useful for discussing trends or predictive signs.
Great. Okay, let's try and wrap up with some words that describe maybe positive traits or fundamental principles.
Good idea. Starting with positive traits, we have zealous.
Zealous. Having great enthusiasm or passion for something. This suggests really intense passion and dedication.
It's a strong word, yeah. Describes deep commitment and energy. It's more specific, more powerful than just saying enthusiastic. The source gives examples like the zealous soccer fans, the zealous entrepreneur, the zealous artist.
And another positive trait, gregarious. Sounds friendly?
It is. Gregarious. Fond of company, sociable. Describes someone who is outgoing and genuinely enjoys being with other people.
Like the gregarious host. The dog was so gregarious. The politician's gregarious personality. A pretty straightforward positive descriptor for personality.
Yes, very useful for describing people in social contexts. Now here's a word describing a really valuable mental state. Equanimity.
Equanimity. Calmness, composure, evenness of temper.
So this is about keeping your cool, especially under pressure.
Exactly. It's a key concept for resilience and self-control. The examples show this. The surgeon maintained her equanimity. He faced the criticism with equanimity. She remained a model of equanimity.
It's a powerful word for describing that kind of grace under pressure. Really useful.
Absolutely. Two more positive-leaning words. Axiomatic. Axiomatic. Self-evident, unquestionable. Meaning something's so clearly true it doesn't need proof. Like a basic principle.
Precisely. This is crucial for academic discussion or formal arguments. It lets you identify those fundamental, universally accepted truths. The source's examples are perfect. It's axiomatic that all living things need water. The idea of free speech is axiomatic in democratic societies. It's axiomatic that two parallel lines will never intersect.
Using axiomatic really signals you're referring to a foundational, unquestioned principle. Sets a certain tone.
It does. And finally, perspicacious. Sounds impressive.
Perspicacious. Having keen insight. Mentally sharp. So this describes someone who's quick to understand things, judges well, sees through complexity.
Yeah, it's not just being smart in general. It's specifically that ability to quickly see through the surface details to the core truth or the underlying pattern. Invaluable for reading comprehension, analyzing arguments, formulating your own.
Right.
Examples, the perspicacious detective, the student's perspicacious analysis. She is known for her perspicacious observations.
That's a fantastic word to describe someone with really sharp analytical skills.
It is, and actually a very useful trait for navigating the complex world that this kind of C2 vocabulary prepares you for.
So thinking about all these words, what does this all mean? As we've gone through them, it seems really clear they aren't just, fancy alternatives for simpler words.
No, definitely not.
They offer more precise or more nuanced or maybe more formal ways to express ideas that simpler words just can't quite capture.
Exactly right. Using conundrum instead of just difficult problem conveys that specific intellectual puzzle. Describing something widespread as ubiquitous is much more impactful than saying it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Calling a deep change of metamorphosis signals a fundamental transformation, not just some superficial adjustment.
And using words like perspicacious for keen insight or equanimity for that composure under pressure. It lets you analyze people and situations with so much more sophistication. And this is exactly why the source highlights them as key for those higher IELTS bands, isn't it? They're the words you need to really understand complex reading passages, craft nuanced arguments in your writing, and express yourself precisely and fluently when you speak.
Mastering them moves you beyond just basic communication to a level where you can handle complex topics with greater ease, greater accuracy. That directly supports the goal of getting higher scores and, like the source says, opening up those opportunities.
This deep dive into these C2 words, it really hammers home that expanding your vocabulary at this level isn't just about memorizing definitions for a test.
Not at all.
It's about gaining a richer toolkit for understanding and expressing complexity, wouldn't you say?
Right. It's about being able to really grasp complex arguments, articulate your own ideas with precision, and just engage with a much wider range of texts and discussions. It genuinely enhances your ability to interact with the world.
And that source premise that this vocabulary leads to better opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty compelling when you think about it like that, beyond just the IELTS exam itself. Consider how expanding your language this way isn't just about passing a test, but really about expanding your ability to understand and engage with a wider world. Ideas, people. How might mastering a word like, say, perspicacious, that keen insight, or equanimity, that calmness under pressure, how might that not just help you in an exam, but actually help you navigate complex situations in life or at work, where understanding people or keeping your cool are absolutely key?
That's a great point. Learning these words is really learning how to think and how to express yourself with greater sophistication about everything around you. It can open doors not just in academia or your career, but really in how you perceive and interact with the world. All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a slightly different approach. Instead of just one article, we're looking at something maybe more foundational, a vocabulary list.
That's right. Specifically, it's a C1 CEFR English vocabulary list from a website called ssl-lounge.com.
Right. And what we want to do is really dig into this list. You know, what kind of words are actually on it? What does that tell us about C1, at least according to this source? And maybe pull out some thoughts on what it means to have this level of vocabulary when you're trying to, you know, get informed about complex stuff.
Yeah. And the site itself says this list builds on their B2 list. So there's a progression.
Okay.
And they have lists for all the levels mentioned there. A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. It's all laid out.
That's helpful context. So before we dive into the words themselves, just quickly, the source itself, it's a web page, looks pretty standard.
Yeah, you've got the logo, navigation links for things like grammar, reference, test prep.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. C1 advanced prep specifically mentioned.
Right. And business English, stuff like that. Plus mentions of apps, iOS, Android. And a copyright notice that runs, interestingly, from 2001 right up to 2025. So it's been around a while.
Okay, so it's not just some random list someone posted yesterday.
No. It feels like part of a bigger educational system.
Yeah.
Designed for learners, clearly aiming at exams like the C1 Advanced.
Right, which tells us straight away this vocabulary is probably geared towards, let's say, academic or formal use, practical application in those areas.
Exactly. It's not just vocab for chatting. It's for tackling higher level communication tasks.
Okay, so let's get into it. The words themselves. What does a C1 list look like based on this source? I mean, for you listening, if C1 is your goal, you're aiming to handle complex texts, speak fluently. This is the raw material, right?
Pretty much. And the list is just alphabetical, nothing fancy there.
Yeah.
But even just glancing at the start, the A section, it tells you a lot.
Go on.
Well, you immediately get words like abolish, accountability, acquisition, administer, allegation, amend, analogy, arbitrary, articulate, even things like assassination, assembly, assertion, asylum, atrocity.
Whoa. Okay. Even just hearing those, that feels different from, say, B1 or B2 vocabulary. They sound heavier, more formal.
That's exactly it. A lot of them connect to, law, politics, business, social issues.
Yeah.
Think about reading a news analysis or something.
Right. You'd need administer or amend for policy talk.
Or acquisition or audit for business news.
Asylum, atrocity for human rights discussions. Yeah, okay. You need these to decode those kinds of serious sources.
Precisely. And it's not just nouns either. The list is full of different word types. You've got verbs like accelerate, adhere, administer again, amend, applaud, articulate, assemble, assert, attain, attribute, authorize, await. And loads of adjectives too. Absent, absurd, accessible, accountable, accused, acute, adjacent, adverse, aesthetic, agricultural. You get the idea.
Yeah, it's a real mix, which makes sense, I suppose. C1 isn't just about knowing the names of things.
No. It's about describing, judging, connecting ideas, expressing nuances. You need those specific verbs and adjectives to do that properly. It's moving beyond just general terms.
What's interesting, though, and maybe a bit unexpected, it's not all super formal or academic, is it? I saw words like barrel, base, blade, blast.
Right, in bulk, burden, burial, chaos, creep, crush, debris.
Yeah. Those feel more concrete. Some even quite dramatic.
Yes, and that mix is important. It tells you C1 vocab isn't just for sitting in a seminar. It's also for understanding maybe vivid descriptions in literature or detailed reports of events.
Words like blast, bleed, brutal, burst, they carry impact.
Exactly. It allows for engaging with richer, more descriptive texts, but often with a precision or intensity beyond simpler words.
Something else I noticed, looking through lots of word families seem to show up.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of it at this level.
Like you see accountability and then accountable.
Accumulate and accumulation.
Allegation, allegedly.
Yep. Allocate, allocation, amend, amendment.
Applaud and appreciation. Assemble and assembly. Assert and assertion.
Assure and assurance.
Yeah.
Even attribute as both a noun and a verb.
Right. It feels less like just memorizing single words.
Exactly. It's more about understanding how words are built.
Right.
Roots, prefixes, suffixes. If you get allege, then allegation and allegedly aren't really new words, you know.
Yeah, it's like a shortcut. It helps you decode stuff, even if you haven't seen that exact form before.
Definitely. It's about grasping the underlying system, which really expands your usable vocabulary much faster.
It feels like learning the language's internal logic more deeply, and the sheer range of topics this list touches on, it's kind of staggering.
Isn't it? Just scanning through, you find words related to, well, everything. Politics, obviously, ballot, citizenship, coalition, constitution, coup, dictator, electoral, legislation.
Economics and business, audit, bankruptcy, broadband, capitalism, commodity, copyright, earnings, fiscal.
Social issues, psychology, behavioral, cognitive, compassion, counseling, cult, discrimination, ego, morality.
Health words like chronic, clinical, diagnose, epidemic.
Conflict, disaster, aftermath, aggression, assassination, assault, battlefield, casualty, chaos, collision, debris, destructive, massacre, missile, atrocity. Wow. And abstract concepts too. Analogy, arbitrary, credibility, dilemma, doctrine, essence, legitimate, logic, magnitude, momentum, paradox, premise. It just goes on and on.
That breadth. That seems like maybe the key thing about C1 vocabulary if your goal is to be well informed.
I think so. To really understand, say, international news or analyses of social trends or science discussions, you just need the vocabulary to span all these different areas.
Yeah, you can't follow a complex argument if you don't know the key terms they're using.
No.
This list really confirms that C1 means being able to operate across this huge intellectual landscape.
It's the difference between getting the gist of a simplified news story and, say, reading an in-depth piece in The Economist or a serious journal.
Right, which will naturally draw on all these different fields. And you also see words for like precision and measurement.
Oh, yeah. Things like density, dimension, dip, dose, drain, excess, expenditure, fiber, fiscal, flow, fluid, fraction, frequency, fuel, gain, gear.
Grasp, gravity, grid, grip, gross.
Exactly. It shows that C1 isn't just about the big ideas, it's also about understanding the details, the processes, the nuances.
Whether it's science or economics or just describing something carefully.
It lets you move from just a general sense to really comprehending the specifics of how things work or how they're being measured or described.
Okay, so if we try and pull this together, what this specific C1 list from Essa Lounge seems to show is that C1 vocabulary is, well, it's more formal, often more abstract. It covers a massive range of complex topics.
Definitely.
It relies heavily on understanding word families, not just isolated words.
Crucial point, yeah.
And it gives you the tools for both, kind of dramatic or impactful expression and very detailed, precise description.
That sums it up pretty well, I think. Basically, getting this kind of vocabulary gives you the linguistic toolkit you need to properly engage with the world through sophisticated English sources.
Right. To understand the nuances, analyze complex situations, discuss things in detail across loads of different fields.
It's the vocabulary you need to really process information deeply, not just skim the surface.
It turns that feeling of information overload into something more like informed understanding, hopefully.
That's the goal. Yeah.
And seeing this list, on that site with all the other resources mentioned, the grammar guides, the test prep, the apps, it's a good reminder that vocabulary, even all these words, it's still just one part of the picture.
Absolutely. You need the words, sure. But you also need to know how they fit together, the grammar, how they're actually used in context, and of course, how to use them yourself effectively when you speak or write.
Which kind of leads us to a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on. When you look at a list like this, just packed with words for complex ideas, systems, tiny details, does becoming well-informed just mean knowing lots and lots of these fancy words?
Or is it maybe more about how you use them, how you connect them, analyze the ideas they represent, see the bigger picture in the sources you read?
Right. A skill that might depend just as much on understanding the grammar, the context, all that other stuff hinted at on that original website.
Yeah. Is it the words themselves or what you do with them? Something to think about.
All right. So are you ready to really boost your English fluency? I mean, take it to that next level.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Well, today we're diving deep into phrasal verbs.
Those are essential.
They really are. They're like the secret code to sounding really natural,
Yes.
especially if you're already pretty comfortable with the basics of English.
Right, you got to get those phrasal verbs down.
Exactly.
And what I think is so fascinating about them is the way they kind of weave themselves into just like everyday English.
Yeah, it's like you can't escape them, can you?
No, you can't. And they're not just about casual chit chat.
Right.
They pop up everywhere. We'll see them in like, professional settings, travel scenarios, even when you're talking about like learning new things or improving yourself.
Yeah, you're right. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
We've got 25 essential phrasal verbs to unpack today, and I'm telling you, you'll be surprised by how their meanings can shift depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's true. It's like sometimes the same phrasal verb can have so many different meanings.
Right.
It's like they're these little chameleons
Right.
blending in, adding that extra layer of meaning.
Subtle mastery, huh?
Yes. That's what sets apart a fluent speaker.
For sure. So let's start with those everyday conversations, the ones we have all the time. Like I'm thinking about like turn up and run into. They seem so simple on the surface.
Right. Yeah.
But I bet there's more to them than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Take turn up, for example.
Okay.
If someone says he didn't turn up for the meeting, like that kind of has a negative connotation to it,
Yeah.
right?
You're like, where were you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Implies a lack of responsibility. Maybe even like a little bit of disrespect.
For sure.
But if you're at a party and the volume's too low, you might say, can you turn up the music?
Yeah, that's true.
Same verb, totally different vibe, right?
It is. It's like the context around the phrasal verb, it like colors it, gives it that extra layer of meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And run into kind of has that element of chance, like surprise. If you say, I ran into an old friend, that paints a much more vivid picture than just saying like, oh, I met an old friend.
Right. I see what you mean.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. You can like almost feel the surprise and joy in that encounter.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about the work and business category.
Okay.
And I noticed in this section, look into and come up with. These are verbs you'd probably hear, in an office setting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe in a boardroom, who knows?
Yeah. Boardroom, meeting, like these verbs are all about like, clarity and action in a professional setting.
Right, being efficient.
Efficient. Yeah. If you say, we need to look into this issue that like sounds a lot more, proactive. It's more decisive than just saying like, we need to investigate.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And come up with, that one's all about that creative problem solving.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a good one.
I like that. So it's almost like these phrasal verbs cut through all the fluff.
Yes.
They just get straight to the point, which is so important at work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Especially in a fast-paced environment.
Especially in a fast-paced environment. Yeah. And imagine you're in a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And you're struggling to express those key actions.
It would be painful.
Yeah. So mastering these, can make you a much more effective communicator at work.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's get ready to explore the world a little bit. Travel and socializing. When it comes to this, I thought about pick up and drop off.
Yes.
They're essential for getting around, making plans,
Absolutely. I mean, think about that classic travel phrase. Can you pick me up from the airport?
It's so common.
It's so common.
Yeah.
It's direct. It's clear. It gets the message across.
Effortless.
Yeah, effortless. Yeah. And drop off too. Like I'll drop you off at the station on my way. Makes, coordinating plans so much smoother.
Yeah, super smooth.
Super smooth.
What's interesting about those two is it highlights the social aspect of language,
I know,
if you offer to pick someone up or drop them off, it's more than just the action, It kind of conveys a sense of, I don't know, like helpfulness, consideration.
Right, you're going out of your way for them a little.
Exactly. Okay, and speaking of subtle shifts in meaning, check in. That one seems to have like multiple personality.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Depending on the context.
It does.
Right.
You've hit the nail on the head there. Check in at a hotel, like that's a formal procedure, right? Yeah. But if you say check in with a friend, that's just casual.
Totally different.
Totally different. It implies like that you care.
Right. You're just seeing how they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a perfect example of how, phrasal verbs just adapt and evolve, They just change.
Yes, they do.
Depending on the situation. All right, it's time to level up our skills even more. Learning and self-improvement. I'm intrigued by catch up on and figure out, they seem to like capture the essence of personal growth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really do. Catch up on, that kind of implies that you're making an effort, right?
Yeah.
Like a conscious effort to, stay current, expand your knowledge.
Yeah, it's like active learning.
Yes. And figure out, has that problem solving vibe, right?
It's like that aha moment.
Yes, it's about like overcoming challenges, pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Which is like part of personal development, right?
Absolutely. Embracing those aha moments.
Yeah.
And recognizing that, learning it's a journey.
It never ends.
It never ends. What's fascinating is how these verbs kind of empower you to like talk about your learning journey.
Yeah, to actually articulate it.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
So thinking about those learning goals, is there a particular phrasal verb from this category that like resonates with you right now?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Something that you could see yourself using, in your self-improvement journey.
Let me think. I think figure out, actually. I like that one because, well, I am always trying to figure out new ways to approach problems.
Yeah.
Or just learn from my experiences.
Absolutely.
It's a verb that shows that continuous growth,
Yes.
which I find motivating, It never stops.
It never stops.
So I like that one.
It's like figure out becomes a reminder to just stay curious.
Right.
And embrace that whole learning process.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know what you're gonna learn next when you're trying to figure things out.
Exactly.
I like that.
That's a good one.
It really is amazing how much meaning these little verbs pack. They really make our communication so much more dynamic.
They do, yeah. It's like they unlock fluency somehow.
Yeah.
Make English sound, more natural.
Speaking of unlocking things,
Yeah.
I have a fun idea.
Okay.
How about we do a little quiz just to test what we know about these phrasal verbs so far?
Oh, I love a quiz.
Yeah.
Let's do it. See if our listeners have been paying attention.
Okay, first question. Imagine you're working on a project and it's just not going anywhere. You finally decide to just stop working on it completely.
All the time.
Right. So which phrasal verb would you use? Would you say that you gave up on the project or looked into it or maybe turned up at the meeting?
Okay, so we're looking for the verb that means to just like stop completely, abandon it.
Exactly. And the answer is
Gave up.
gave up. Yeah.
Yeah, you gave up on that project.
It definitely doesn't feel good, but
Yeah.
it happens. Sometimes things just don't work out.
It's a fact of life. All right, ready for the next question?
Get me with it.
Okay, so imagine you're trying to understand like a really complex problem
Yeah.
and you want to get to the root of it, like all the little details.
Okay, so like you're really trying to solve it, not just scratch the surface.
Exactly, yeah. So which phrasal verb fits best here? Would you figure out the problem, go over the details, or run into a solution?
So this is all about being really analytical, right? Like really digging into the problem.
Yes, exactly. Thinking it through.
So the answer must be
Go over.
go over. That's right.
Yeah, you're going over all the details.
Okay, last question. You're getting ready to give a presentation
Okay.
and you want to practice it beforehand. Which verb describes that? Would you show up the presentation, come up with a new idea, or maybe run through your speech?
This one is all about getting ready,
Yeah.
rehearsing, making sure you know everything.
Yeah. Making sure it all flows, all the pieces are in place.
Exactly. So the answer has to be
Run through.
run through.
Yeah.
You got to run through that presentation.
Make sure you're prepared for anything.
Exactly.
Well done, listeners. You guys are pros. You're really getting the hang of these verbs.
You're going to be fluent in no time.
But this is just the beginning. I mean, there's so much more out there, when it comes to phrasal verbs.
Oh yeah, so many. It's like a whole other world.
It is like another level of fluency.
It is.
So before we finish our deep dive today, I want to talk about how to actually make these 25 verbs part of your everyday English.
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand them,
Right.
but how do you actually use them naturally,
That's the real challenge. It's all about like bridging that gap between knowledge and actually applying it.
Yeah.
The good news is with phrasal verbs, like they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to how native speakers use them in conversations, in movies, and songs.
Yeah, that's good advice. Like just be more aware.
Be more aware. Yeah, you'll start to notice patterns and kind of pick up on the nuances.
Yeah, it's like immersive learning,
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
Try using these phrasal verbs in your own conversations.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You might stumble a bit at first.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But that's okay. That's all part of the learning process.
Right, you're not going to get it perfect the first time.
Exactly, yeah. But the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
Of course, of course. It's like anything, right? Practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
But sometimes just like jumping in can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips to make the learning process a bit more, I don't know, organized?
Oh, absolutely. Like a great technique is to use flashcards.
Oh, yeah.
Like write the phrasal verb on one side and then maybe like an example sentence on the other.
Yeah, classic.
Classic, yeah. That way you're not just like memorizing the definition. You're actually seeing it in action.
Right. You see how it works in a sentence.
Exactly, yeah. Another good strategy is to keep like a phrasal verb journal.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Every time you encounter a new one, just jot it down.
Yeah, like your own personal dictionary.
Exactly. And you can add an example sentence too.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed at how quickly your vocabulary will grow.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Before we wrap up completely, I'm just curious, do you have like a go-to phrasal verb? One that you just use all the time?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think mine would probably be breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
It's so versatile. You can break down a problem, you can break down a concept, you can even break down a wall.
Yeah, it's true.
It just means to analyze something, make it more simple, make it more manageable.
Yeah, and it works in so many situations. I think that's what's so cool about phrasal verbs, right?
Yeah.
They're adaptable.
Yes.
And once you start using them, your English just sounds so much more natural.
It really does.
Yeah.
So just remember, this deep dive, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep practicing, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yes. Learning should be fun.
It should be fun, yeah.
Yeah.
The more you enjoy it, the more you'll learn.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day-to-day, what phrasal verbs are you going to try to use?
Yeah, good question.
Will you brush up on your skills? Will you look out for some new opportunities?
I might try to dream up a new adventure.
Ooh, I like that one. The possibilities are endless.
They are. It's been so fun diving into the world of phrasal verbs with you.
It has been.
Happy learning, everyone.
And that's a wrap on our exploration of these fascinating little, bundles of words. We hope you feel inspired to embrace phrasal verbs, make them a part of your everyday English, because fluency is a journey, not a destination, right? And every step you take brings you closer to mastering this amazing language. Thanks for joining us.
Ever get that feeling you might be using a word wrong, but you're too afraid to ask?
Oh, yeah.
Well, fear no more. Because today we're diving deep into 15 words that even fluent English speakers mess up. We've got a YouTube script here all about leveling up your vocabulary. And you might be surprised by some of these common mistakes.
It is fascinating, though, how some of these errors stem from subtle distinctions that are easy to miss in casual conversation.
Okay, let's unpack this. We'll start with some beginner traps. Words that seem straightforward, but can be surprisingly tricky. I'll be honest, the word literally is one I hear misused all the time.
Yep.
Just the other day, someone told me they were literally dying from how much they had to do that week.
Yes. Literally seems to be a word that's been taken hostage by hyperbole.
So remind us, what should literally mean? Why is it important to use it correctly?
Literally means something actually happened, exactly as stated.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the reality of a situation, not an exaggeration.
Right.
While your friend might have felt overwhelmed, they weren't literally dying.
Right.
You see, using literally correctly makes sure your words carry their intended weight. It's about precision and clarity, especially in an age where misinformation can spread so easily.
That's a really good point. The impact on communication is huge. Okay, another beginner word that trips people up is unique. I once saw a store advertising a sale on very unique items. Something about that just felt off.
That's because unique means one of a kind.
Right.
Inherently special. It stands alone.
Right.
So adding modifiers like very or quite is redundant and actually weakens the impact of the word.
So instead of saying something is very unique, how can we highlight that specialness in everyday conversation?
Let the word unique speak for itself.
Okay.
You could say that painting is truly unique or her style is unique. You're emphasizing the inherent specialness without needing to qualify it further.
That's so interesting. I can see how that subtle shift makes a big difference. Even these beginner words have hidden depths. You really have to think about their true meaning.
Absolutely, and that's what makes language so fascinating. Now, prepare to have some assumptions challenged because some words have meanings completely different from what most people assume.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example of one of these words.
Let's start with irony.
Okay.
Many people confuse irony with simple coincidence or bad luck. For example, someone might say, "It's so ironic that I won the lottery and then got hit by a car."
So winning the lottery and then getting hit by a car, that's just bad luck, not irony.
Yeah.
What makes a situation truly ironic?
True irony involves a situation where the outcome is the opposite of what was expected, often with a humorous or sarcastic undertone. A classic example would be a fire station burning down. It's not just about unfortunate timing, it's about a surprising reversal of expectations.
Wow, that makes so much sense. It's not just about something bad happening. It's about the unexpected nature of the situation.
You see, understanding irony helps us analyze situations more deeply. It's not just about bad luck. It's about recognizing the unexpected and sometimes absurd nature of life.
Speaking of unexpected twists,
Yeah.
let's talk about a word. Often misused in situations with high stakes. Alibis. I feel like I hear people using alibi as a synonym for any kind of excuse.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have a good alibi.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a common mistake. People might say, "I didn't finish the project, but I have a good alibi."
Wait, so if it's not just any excuse, what makes a real alibi? I'm genuinely confused.
An alibi has a very specific legal meaning.
Okay.
It refers to proof that someone was somewhere else at the time a crime was committed, demonstrating their innocence. It's not just any excuse. It's evidence that clears someone of suspicion.
So using alibi to explain why you didn't finish a project wouldn't really make sense.
Exactly. Using alibi in casual conversation when you simply mean excuse can actually undermine your credibility. It shows a lack of precision in your language.
Okay, this is making me rethink how I use these words. What other intermediate words are lurking out there, ready to trip us up?
How about a word that's often confused with its near opposite? Disinterested. Many people use disinterested to mean uninterested or bored. For instance, someone might say, "I was completely disinterested in that meeting."
Disinterested. If it doesn't mean bored or uninterested, then what does it actually mean?
Disinterested actually describes someone who is impartial or unbiased, free from personal stake or interest in a situation. A good example would be a judge who must remain disinterested in the outcome of a case.
Okay.
They can't be swayed by personal opinions or biases.
So if I wanted to say that I found the meeting boring, disinterested wouldn't be the right word to use.
Precisely. In that case, uninterested or bored would be more accurate.
Right.
Disinterested implies neutrality and objectivity. It's about being impartial, not uncaring.
I never realized how a single word could completely change the tone and meaning of a sentence. It's all about understanding those subtle but powerful nuances.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here to explore. Are you ready to be bemused by the next word?
Bemused. Okay, you've definitely got my attention. What's so tricky about this one?
People often think bemused means amused or entertained.
Okay.
You might hear someone say, "I was bemused by his silly jokes."
So if bemused doesn't mean amused, then what's the real meaning?
Bemused actually means puzzled, bewildered, or even slightly confused. Think of it as a state of mild perplexity, for example. You might be bemused by a riddle you can't solve,
Huh?
or a strange event you don't fully understand.
So it's not about laughing at a joke. It's about that feeling of, wait, what just happened? That makes a lot of sense.
Imagine someone watching a magic trick,
Right.
their brow furrowed, a slight smile playing on their lips.
Yeah.
That's bemusement. It's not amusement,
Yeah.
but a fascinated perplexity.
Okay, now I'm really starting to understand the difference.
Uh-huh.
Bemused is a much richer word than I realized.
Mm-hmm.
It's about that space between amusement and confusion.
Exactly. And these subtle distinctions can make a big difference in how your message is received. Are you ready for our final intermediate word?
Bring it on. I'm ready to tackle anything.
All right. Let's explore a word that's often misused to describe something grand or impressive. Enormity. People often use enormity to emphasize the sheer size or scope of something. You might hear someone say, "I was overwhelmed by the enormity of the project."
That's how I usually use it. But I have a feeling it doesn't quite mean what I think it means.
Yeah.
What's the real meaning?
While enormity can relate to size, its primary meaning leans towards something more serious and weighty.
Okay.
It often refers to extreme wickedness, outrageousness, or the sheer gravity of a situation,
Right.
particularly in a moral or ethical context.
So it's less about physical size And more about the weight of the implications.
Precisely. For instance, if you were discussing a horrific crime, you might speak of the enormity of the act to emphasize its moral depravity and the severity of its consequences.
Wow, that puts the word in a whole new light. It's not just about something being big, it's about something being profoundly impactful, often in a negative sense.
Exactly. It's a word that carries a lot of weight, both literally and figuratively.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already. And I'm starting to feel the enormity and the true sense of the word, of all these linguistic nuances. What's next on our journey?
Next, we'll be venturing into the realm of advanced words, where the nuances become even more intricate. Are you ready to level up your vocabulary even further?
Absolutely. I'm eager to see what other linguistic gems await us in this deep dive into words.
Right.
It'd be great.
Awesome. Fasten your seatbelts, because these advanced words can be real brain twisters. They're the ones that often pop up in intellectual discussions or professional settings, and misusing them can unfortunately make you sound less credible.
Okay, I'm ready to face the advanced word challenge head on. Let's start with one that I've definitely struggled with in the past.
Decimate.
Decimate is fascinating because its common usage has drifted quite far from its original meaning. People often use it as a synonym for completely destroy, like saying the hurricane decimated the coastal towns. Yeah, I've definitely heard it used that way. But if it doesn't mean to completely destroy, then what does it actually mean?
Decimate has a very specific historical root. It comes from the ancient Roman practice of punishing mutinous troops by killing 1 out of every 10 soldiers. So the original meaning of decimate is to reduce by 1/10, not to obliterate completely.
Wow, I had no idea. That's a pretty grim origin story for a word. So using decimate to describe the total destruction of a town wouldn't be quite right.
Exactly. It's a case of hyperbole overtaking precision. While the impact of a hurricane can be devastating, it's unlikely to literally reduce a town's population by exactly 1/10.
This is why I love these deep dives. You uncover these hidden layers of meaning that we often miss in everyday conversation. It's like learning a secret code.
This word's bloody history reminds us that language carries the weight of the past. Even today, decimate suggests a severe calculated reduction, not total destruction.
Okay, what other advanced words are waiting to be decoded?
Let's tackle one that often gets misused in academic circles: peruse.
Peruse. I'll admit I've been guilty of using this one incorrectly myself. I always thought it meant to quickly skim through something.
That's a very common misconception. In reality, peruse means to read thoroughly and carefully. It implies a close and attentive examination of a text, not a hasty glance.
So if I said I perused the report before the meeting, it would mean I'd given it a very close read, not just skim the headings.
Precisely. Using peruse correctly conveys a sense of diligence and attention to detail. It suggests you've really absorbed the information.
This is another one of those aha moments. I'm realizing that using these advanced words correctly can signal a certain level of intellectual rigor. It shows you're not just skimming the surface.
Exactly. It's about choosing words that accurately reflect the depth of your engagement with the topic.
All right, bring on the next advanced word challenge. I'm feeling more and more confident with each one we tackle.
Let's see if you can crack the code on this one. Nonplussed.
Nonplussed. This one seems tricky. I've heard it used to describe someone who's calm and collected under pressure. Like, even though the presentation went wrong, she remained nonplussed.
That's a clever guess. But it's actually the opposite. Nonplussed describes a state of being surprised and confused, often to the point of speechlessness. It's that feeling of being caught off guard and unsure how to react.
Wow. So it's almost like being speechless with shock.
Exactly. Nonplussed implies a momentary loss of composure, a sense of being bewildered. It's that deer in the headlights feeling.
That makes so much more sense. I can see how misusing this word could lead to some awkward situations.
Indeed, it highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of these advanced words. They can have a big impact on how our message is perceived.
Okay, what other advanced word adventures await us? I'm ready to expand my vocabulary horizons.
Let's explore a word that often gets used in a way that diminishes its true impact. Plethora.
Plethora.
I usually think of this word as meaning a lot of something. In a positive way, like there was a plethora of fun activities to choose from at the festival. That's a common interpretation. But plethora carries a slightly different nuance. While it does mean an abundance of something, it often implies an excessive or overwhelming amount.
Okay.
It can sometimes even suggest a sense of burden or inconvenience.
Interesting. So it's not just about having a lot of something. It's about having maybe too much of it, like it's overflowing.
Precisely. Imagine a situation where you're bombarded with information or faced with an overwhelming number of choices. That sense of being inundated can be captured by the word plethora.
So if I were to say, I have a plethora of emails to
Okay.
respond to, it would imply that I'm feeling a bit swamped by them, not necessarily excited about having a full inbox.
Exactly. It's about that tipping point where abundance starts to feel like excess. It's about that too much of a good thing feeling.
I'm starting to see how using plethora correctly can add a layer of sophistication to my descriptions. It's a much more nuanced way of expressing abundance than just saying a lot.
It's about choosing words that convey not just the quantity, but also the impact of that quantity.
This is making me realize how much I've taken these words for granted, what other advanced words are hiding in plain sight, waiting to be understood.
Let's delve into one that's often misused in discussions about facts and information.
Factoid.
Factoid. This one seems pretty straightforward. I always thought it just meant a small or trivial fact.
That's how it's commonly used, but its original meaning is a bit more nuanced, even controversial. The term factoid was actually coined to describe something that appears to be a fact, but is actually false or unsubstantiated.
Right, really? That's a completely different meaning.
That's the risk with using factoid in its original sense. It implies a degree of skepticism or even doubt about the validity of the information being presented. It can be a way of highlighting that something may sound like a fact, but it hasn't actually been proven true.
This is a perfect example of how language can evolve and shift in meaning over time. It's important to be aware of both the common usage and the original intent behind a word. You're absolutely right. Language is a living, breathing thing that constantly adapts and changes. Our goal is to be aware of those changes and use words in a way that is both accurate and effective.
So how can we use factoid in a way that doesn't accidentally spread misinformation?
If you're unsure of the accuracy of a piece of information, it's best to avoid using factoid altogether. You could say something like, here's an interesting tidbit, or this might be a bit of trivia, but this avoids any implication that the information might be false.
That's really helpful advice. Okay, bring on the next advanced word. I'm ready to conquer some more linguistic complexities.
Let's tackle a word that often causes confusion in discussions and debates. Moot.
Moot? I've always thought of this word as meaning irrelevant or pointless. Like that argument is moot because the decision has already been made.
That's a common understanding, but it's not entirely accurate. While moot can relate to something that's no longer relevant, its original meaning is a bit more nuanced. It originally referred to a matter that is open for debate or discussion.
So if a topic is moot, it's not necessarily pointless. It just means there's room for further discussion or consideration.
Precisely. Imagine a legal case where the circumstances change, making the original point of contention no longer relevant to the outcome. The issue might be considered moot, not because it was unimportant, but because it's no longer central to the case.
That's a really helpful clarification. So it's less about the topic being irrelevant and more about its significance having shifted or diminished.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that the context has changed, and the original point of debate may no longer be the primary focus.
I'm definitely feeling more enlightened than moot after tackling that one. What other advanced word adventures await us?
Let's wrap up our exploration of advanced words with a pair that often trips people up: infer and imply.
Infer and imply, the classic conundrum. I know these words are related to drawing conclusions, but I often mix them up.
It's a common confusion. The key difference lies in who is doing the action. The speaker or writer implies something, meaning they suggest or hint at something without stating it directly. The listener or reader infers something, meaning they draw a conclusion based on what is implied.
So if I were to say, it's getting late, I might be implying that it's time to go, even though I haven't explicitly said so.
Exactly. And if you, as the listener, understood my implication, you would have correctly inferred my meaning.
I see. So it's a two-way street. The speaker sends out a subtle signal, and the listener picks up on that signal and draws a conclusion.
Precisely. It's like a subtle dance of communication where meaning is conveyed through suggestion and interpretation.
This distinction is so subtle, but it's crucial for clear communication. Misusing these words can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings.
Absolutely. Mastering the difference between infer and imply is essential for navigating conversations and interpreting written texts accurately. It's about understanding both sides of the communication equation.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. It's amazing how much depth and complexity there is to these seemingly simple words.
And we've only just scratched the surface. But I hope you're starting to see how understanding the the nuances of language, can empower you to communicate with greater clarity and precision.
I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident about using these words correctly. It's like a whole new world of linguistic possibilities has opened up.
And that's the beauty of language learning. It's an ongoing journey of discovery and refinement. Are you ready for a quick challenge to test your newfound knowledge?
Absolutely. Bring it on. All right. Hit me with that word challenge. I'm ready to put my knowledge to the test.
Okay. Let's see if you can recall the true meaning of nonplussed. Without looking back at our discussion, take a moment to think about it.
Okay. No peeking. I think I've got it. Nonplussed means to be surprised and confused, almost to the point of speechlessness. It's like that feeling of being completely thrown off guard and not knowing how to react.
That's absolutely correct. You've successfully decoded nonplussed. It seems our deep dive has truly expanded your vocabulary horizons.
I'm feeling pretty proud of myself right now. This whole experience has been eye-opening. I've realized that using words correctly isn't just about sounding smart. It's about communicating effectively and ensuring that my message is understood.
It's about wielding the power of language with precision and care. Choosing words that accurately reflect not only what we want to say, but also the subtle nuances of meaning we wish to convey.
You know, it's funny because I used to think that vocabulary was just about memorizing definitions. But this deep dive has shown me that it's so much more than that. It's about understanding the history, the etymology, the subtle shades of meaning that make each word unique.
It's about recognizing that words are not static, but dynamic. They evolve over time, their meanings shifting and adapting to reflect the changing world around us.
And that's what makes language so fascinating. It's a living, breathing entity that connects us to the past, informs our present, and shapes our future.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I encourage you to continue exploring the fascinating world of language. Pay attention to the words you use, the words you encounter, and the way they impact your understanding of the world.
I know I will. This has been such a rewarding journey. I'm walking away with a newfound appreciation for the power of words and the importance of using them correctly.
Remember, language is a gift, a tool that allows us to connect, create, and inspire. Let's use it wisely.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Happy wordsmithing. Okay, so let's be real for a sec. Small talk, right? It can be like the most awkward thing ever. Like when you're stuck in a situation and you know you should be chatting, but your mind just goes blank. Anyone else? Feel me on that. But get this. What if I told you that this deep dive could actually turn that dread into pure confidence? And we're going to do it using a source you'd never expect. A video script, get this, for people learning English.
I know, right? Sounds a little out there. But seriously, this script is full of stuff that goes way deeper than just language. It's like a secret masterclass in how humans connect, hidden inside an English lesson.
Okay, I got to admit, when you first mentioned this source, I was kind of like, how can something for total beginners help someone who's already fluent?
That's fair, totally. But the cool thing here is, by breaking small talk down into these simple steps, it actually shows you the psychology behind how we connect. Like, it's a cheat sheet for building rapport, even if you never needed help with English in the first place.
So it's more about understanding the, deeper game, not just memorizing lines.
Exactly. For example, the script makes a big deal about greetings and weather talk, stuff we might think is just filler.
Yeah, I always thought that stuff was kind of pointless.
Right. But they actually serve a super important purpose. Like, humans are literally wired to bond over shared experiences.
Okay.
Even something as simple as complaining about the heat or, whatever the weather's doing.
Okay, yeah, I guess I can see that.
It creates that instant common ground, that we're in this together feeling, which is huge for starting any kind of connection.
Wow, that's actually so true. I never thought about it that way.
And the script goes even further. Instead of those boring old greetings like, "Hi, how are you?" it gives you phrases that fit the specific situation so you get a better response.
Oh, I like where this is going. Give me an example.
So say you're at a party. Instead of that robotic, "Hi, how are you?" try something like, "What brings you here?"
Way more interesting, right?
Way more. It's like you're actually interested, not just saying words. Exactly. It shows you're paying attention and they actually get to share something about themselves. It's what they call a strong bid in, like conversation analysis stuff. Each thing we say is a bid to connect.
Ooh, I'm digging this bidding concept. So we're all just out here trying to make the strongest bid to connect.
Totally. And this script is giving us all the winning moves. Another one they have is, instead of just saying nice weather, you could say something like, "This weather's crazy, right?"
It's like inviting the other person in on the joke. I like it. So it's making small talk feel, I don't know, less robotic. But what really stood out to me was the role-playing part.
Ah, yes. That's where the magic really happens. The people who made this script, they get it. Knowing the right words isn't enough. You got to actually practice using them. And role-playing is the best way to do that.
But what if you don't have someone to practice with? Isn't that kind of, I don't know, weird to do alone?
For sure. But you can totally do it in your head. It's called mental rehearsal. Basically, you just picture yourself in different situations.
Hold on, so you're saying by just imagining myself rocking these small talk moments, I'm actually getting better at it in real life?
You got it. Might sound a little strange, but neuroscientists have found that when you rehearse something mentally, your brain fires up the same way it does when you're actually doing the thing.
No way. That's so cool. It's like training your brain for social situations, like a cheat code for confidence. I'm already feeling less terrified about networking events or, just parties in general.
It's crazy, right? How powerful our brains are. Like, this script really shows you how to use that power to, level up your social skills.
I like that, level up. So we've talked about greetings, weather talk, even practicing in your head. What else does this script have up its sleeve?
Okay, so one thing that really impressed me was the questions. They go way beyond those typical boring questions like, where are you from? Or what do you do? The usual suspects.
Yeah, those can be so snooze fest sometimes.
Right. Instead, they give you all these questions that are actually interesting, designed to, spark real conversations.
Okay, I'm all about those real conversations. Tell me more. Give me the good stuff.
So instead of asking, what do you do? Which can feel kind of like a job interview, they suggest asking, what do you like to do for fun?
I mean, that's a classic for a reason, right? It gets people talking about what they're actually passionate about.
Exactly. It's like you're inviting them to show you their real selves, not just their, LinkedIn profile. And if you really want to go deeper, you could try something like, what's the most interesting thing you've done lately?
Ooh, I like that one. It's like a sneak peek into their adventures. You might even discover you have some cool stuff in common.
Totally. Plus, it shows you're actually curious about them, not just trying to fill the silence. And they even have specific questions for different situations. Like, if you're at a dinner party, you could ask, have you tried any good restaurants lately?
Perfect. Everyone loves talking about food. Instant conversation starter, right there.
It's true. It's something we can all relate to, like enjoying a good meal. Okay, so we've covered greetings, weather talk, asking interesting questions, even mental rehearsal. But what about when you're ready to, make your escape? Does the script help with that too?
Yeah, like how do you end a conversation without being rude?
Don't worry, they got you covered. They have a bunch of different closing phrases depending on the situation. From a simple, it was nice talking to you, to something more like, hey, we should grab coffee sometime.
Oh, I love that they include those follow-up suggestions.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really do click with someone, and it's good to have a way to, keep things going.
Exactly. It shows you're confident and interested, which is always a good look. And even if they can't meet up, it still leaves a good impression. They'll remember you as someone who actually wanted to connect.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed, right? You never know where those initial conversations might lead. What about those times when you just need a quick, casual exit, though, like you're running late or something?
No problem. They have those too. They suggest things like, catch you later or have a great day. Those are perfect for keeping it light and friendly without feeling like you have to, hang around forever.
Okay, so whether you're aiming for a lifelong friendship or just a quick chat, it sounds like this script has given us a whole toolbox for navigating the social world.
Yeah. It's like they took all the guesswork out of small talk and gave us a clear path to follow. It's pretty amazing.
And what's so cool is that this script, even though it's for people learning English, it actually shows us some really deep things about human connections, like a reminder that we all want to feel understood, even in those little everyday conversations.
So true. And I think that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. We're not just learning phrases, we're learning about what makes us human and how even a short conversation can make a difference, create a ripple effect.
It's like we're seeing the world through a whole new lens now, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us to the best part, putting it all into practice. We've talked about a lot today, the different phases of small talk, how to make a bid for connection, even practicing in your head. But now it's your turn, dear listener. Take these ideas and make them your own.
Yes. This is where the real transformation happens. We've given you the tools. Now it's up to you to use them. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. The goal isn't to become some kind of small talk robot.
Exactly. Be yourself, be genuine, and use these techniques to connect with people in a real way. So let's recap the top 3 things we've learned from this unexpected deep dive into, mastering small talk. First, Small talk isn't just random. There's a structure you can follow to make those conversations flow.
Second, the words you use actually matter. This script has given us tons of phrases that are interesting, thoughtful, and perfect for different situations.
And third, practice, practice, practice. Whether you're practicing in your head or even role-playing with a friend, the more you do it, the more confident and natural you'll become.
It really is like freeing, right?
Yeah.
Knowing you have these tools, it takes away that fear of like messing up or saying the wrong thing.
For sure. It's like having this, I don't know, secret weapon for social situations. And honestly, the biggest thing I'm taking away from this is small talk doesn't have to be something you dread. It can actually be like fun, a way to connect with people,
100%. What about you? What's sticking with you from all this? What did you find most helpful from looking at this script?
It's funny. I think what resonated most was realizing that everyone, even people who seem super outgoing, they've probably felt that awkwardness too. This script shows that small talk is a skill, like something you can learn and get better at, just like anything else.
Right. It's not like some people are born knowing how to do it and others aren't.
Exactly. It takes so much pressure off. You can just approach those conversations with curiosity, like a little game. Just see what happens.
I love that. A little game. It really can be like an adventure.
Yeah.
Discovering something new about someone, even if it's just a tiny thing.
And it reminds you that even those small moments, a quick chat, a smile, they can all make a difference. It's like we're all connected in this big web, and every conversation adds to that,
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into, well, the surprisingly interesting world of small talk, I want to leave you with this. Think about the next time you are in a situation where you know there's going to be some small talk. Maybe it's a party or a work event, even just grabbing coffee. What are you most excited to try out from all the stuff we talked about?
Such a good question.
Yeah.
And hey, remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Just be yourself, be genuine, and see what happens. You might be surprised how fun and even meaningful those small conversations can be. So go out there and conquer the world of small talk. We believe in you.
Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today we're going to be exploring, well, actually, your English learning journey using a script for a video for English language learners. It's going to be like a deep dive within a deep dive, really. So no matter where you're at, beginner, advanced, somewhere in between, there should be something here for you.
Yeah, I think it's so cool how this script uses like real stories from other people learning English, to like inspire. It's like we're all on this journey together,
Totally. And speaking of journeys, the script like starts off by asking this big question, right? What made you want to learn English in the first place? The why behind your adventure, basically. They give this example of a learner, Anna, and her goal was she just wanted to watch TV, like without subtitles. And what I thought was so cool about that was like, it was totally, coming from her, like she just wanted to do it, not because someone told her she had to or anything.
Right.
Like those are the best reasons,
Right.
when it comes from inside.
Yeah, for sure. Knowing your why can really make a difference, I think, especially when things get tough, When you hit a wall, you just don't feel like studying. It's like having a compass to keep you, heading in the right direction.
I love that, the compass. So I'm curious, what was your why, when you started out? Take a second to think about that. It's worth, revisiting it as you keep going too. Now, the script also digs into how, like, where you are can affect your learning. It gets that not everyone can be like surrounded by English speakers all the time, but it kind of challenges us to get creative.
Yeah. This story about Raj really stuck with me. He lives in this village where literally no one speaks English. And so he basically turned his whole house into this like learning tool, sticky notes everywhere, using English for like everyday stuff. It just proves you don't have to be in some English speaking country to learn it well.
It's amazing, right? Talk about resourcefulness. He didn't wait for the perfect situation. He just made it himself. And this actually leads perfectly into what the script talks about next. How to, take all that time we waste and turn it into learning time.
Oh yeah, like when you're scrolling on your phone or whatever and it's not even like fun anymore.
Exactly. But imagine if you could use that time to learn instead. The script mentions Maria, and she would spend like 30 minutes every night on, I think it was TikTok, and she swapped that for English learning videos, and guess what? In just a couple of weeks, her vocabulary like exploded.
Wow.
See? Totally doable. And what's even cooler is you can do this throughout your day, right? Like when you're commuting, waiting in line, even just doing chores. You can listen to podcasts, use apps, just sneak in little bits of English here and there.
Yeah. Just make it a part of your life,
Yeah.
The more you can do that, the more natural it all feels.
Exactly. The script then kind of switches gears and talks about common mistakes that can, slow you down. And this is where I think your expertise is going to be so helpful. One of the first things it mentions is like getting too hung up on grammar, to the point where you're not even really speaking. It's easy to just memorize all the rules, but language is really about talking to people, right?
Absolutely. Grammar's important, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. But sometimes I think it gets too much focus, Like, it's more important to be able to speak fluently and confidently, even if you mess up a little. It's about finding that balance, I think. What do you think?
Oh, 100%. I totally agree with that. You could know all the grammar in the world, but if you can't have a conversation, what's the point, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like you learn how to play an instrument, but then you never actually play any music.
Exactly. You just practice scales all day long.
Mm.
Okay, so the script's next point, I think this is something we've all dealt with, being scared to make mistakes. I mean, every language learner goes through that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I think it's so important to, like, change how we think about mistakes. They're not like failures. They're actually like feedback.
Yeah.
Each mistake is a chance to learn and get better.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It takes the pressure off, And this kind of leads into the third mistake they talk about in the script, which is not practicing regularly. We've all been there, right? Like crazy study sessions and then nothing for weeks.
Yeah, I've totally been there. It's always better to do a little bit every day than a lot all at once.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't go to the gym once a month for 8 hours and expect to see results. You got to be consistent.
So true. Short, consistent workouts, that's the key. Like the script mentions this learner who went from like these huge study sessions every now and then to just doing 30 minutes a day every day. And they saw way more progress.
It's amazing, right? How much difference just a little bit each day can make.
Yeah.
Our brains, they actually learn better that way too, through repetition and like slow exposure, not cramming.
So instead of trying to do it all at once, just find little ways to fit English into your day, right?
Exactly.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and look at what the script says about, learning English if you don't live in an English-speaking country.
Yeah.
Which can feel like a huge obstacle, but the script has some pretty encouraging examples.
Yeah, I was really interested in that part.
It comes back to what we were saying before about creating that immersive environment, even without actually being around English speakers. And technology can really help with this, right?
Totally.
Like apps for language exchange, online forums, even streaming services with subtitles.
There's so much out there.
Right. Like in the script, they talk about Marco from Spain, and he basically made like his own little English world at home, reading news in English, watching English YouTubers, even talking to friends online from other countries.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's like bringing the English-speaking world to you.
You don't even have to get on a plane.
Exactly. Which leads perfectly into the script's like final challenge, focus on output.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just understand English. You got to use it, by speaking or writing.
Yeah, that's where the real learning happens, I think. Getting out there and actually using the language. I know it can be scary at first, but the more you do it, the easier it gets.
The script suggests a few things you can try, like recording yourself speaking and then listening back to see what you can improve.
Well, that's a good one.
Or joining a speaking group, or even just writing like a short paragraph in English every day.
I like that.
Just little things to get you practicing,
The key is to find what works for you and then make it a habit. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Even 5 minutes a day can make a difference in the long run.
And as we start wrapping up this deep dive here, I think one of the most important things to remember is learning English, it's a journey, right? And every little thing you do, it brings you closer to your goals.
That's a great way to put it.
It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. I mean, we've talked about so much, right? Like from that whole why thing to making your own little English world. But what really sticks out to me is how much the script is all about, like, doing stuff.
Oh, yeah, totally. You can't just sit there and like, hope you'll learn English.
Right. You got to get out there and use it. And remember how we talked about making mistakes? The script wants us to think about those differently, too.
Yeah, they're not like the end of the world.
They're actually how you get better.
Like little stepping stones.
I love that. So as we wrap up this whole deep dive into learning English, I have one question for you. And it kind of goes back to that output thing we were talking about. What's one small step you're going to take this week to like actually use your English?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Could be anything, really. Record yourself talking for a minute, write an email in English, even just chat with someone online.
It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing.
Exactly. Just something small but consistent.
Like we were saying before, 5 minutes a day, it all adds up.
We've explored a ton of tips today and heard some pretty inspiring stories. I bet there are a few that really resonated with you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So think about those and how you can use them in your own learning. And remember, learning English, it should be fun, not a chore.
Totally. It's an adventure.
Embrace those challenges, celebrate how far you've come and never stop exploring. Happy learning, everyone. Okay, have you ever felt like native English speakers are just talking way too fast?
Yeah.
It's like they're speaking some kind of secret code or just mumbling.
Right.
You shared a masterclass with me about speaking and understanding faster English, so we are diving into that today.
Yeah, and I think it'll be great to not just figure out how to understand rapid-fire English, but also how to speak it more naturally and fluently ourselves.
For sure, for sure. I saw in the source material, they talk about this shadowing technique. I'm really curious to learn more about that. But first, why does English sound so fast to non-native speakers in the first place?
I think it's a few different things all coming together at once. One big thing is connected speech.
Okay.
Which is basically how words kind of blend together,
Yeah.
instead of what do you want? It sounds more like wadaya wanna.
Yeah. So it's not that the words themselves are faster. It's just they all kind of...
They mush together.
Yeah, they get mashed together, yeah. And then there's all those contractions too, right?
Absolutely. Contractions and reductions are everywhere in natural English. And I think they definitely add to the speed. Things like, going to do, becoming gonna, or want to, shrinking to wanna.
Yeah.
It's like we like to be lazy with our words, but it makes it hard for people to understand.
Yeah. No, what is this schwa thing I keep hearing about?
Yeah, so the schwa...
What is that?
The schwa is a tricky one. It's like this chameleon vowel that changes based on the sounds that are around it.
Oh, okay.
It's this really unstressed, kind of mumbly sound you hear in words the classic example is banana. It's not banana, it's more like bunana.
Yeah.
It just becomes this lazy sound.
So the schwa, it can pop up in any word then.
Yeah.
Not just, banana is the one everyone uses.
It can even happen a bunch of times in the same word. Think of the word photography.
Yeah.
It's not photography, it's more like photography.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
The schwa can really change how a word sounds.
It really is like a secret code. I think an audio example would be really good here.
Yeah.
The masterclass actually gives an example of, I should have told you earlier, both at kind of a slower speed and a native speed.
Okay.
So let's listen to that.
Sounds good.
Audio plays, I should have told you earlier, followed by, I should have told you earlier. Yeah. It's crazy.
It does.
It's almost like two different languages. I can totally see why this is a challenge.
Yeah. But what's cool is that you don't necessarily need to hear every single sound to get what's being said. Our brains are actually really good at filling in the missing information.
That's good to know because, yes, some of that is impossible to understand. Okay, so how do we train our ears to be better at decoders of all this?
Well, one really good way is to practice something called chunking.
Okay.
And basically, instead of getting stuck on each individual word, you try to hear phrases as units.
Oh.
It's kind of like how we read, right? We're not focusing on each letter. We group the letters into words.
Yeah.
And then phrases.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, sure. Imagine someone's do you want to grab some lunch later?
Yeah.
If you try to pick out every single sound,
yeah,
it's just a jumble, right?
Yeah.
But if you kind of chunk it together in your mind, you want to grab some lunch later,
right?
It becomes way more clear.
Oh, yeah.
So you kind of get the big idea.
Yeah, you're listening for the key idea and not every little word.
Exactly.
Cool. That kind of leads into the next thing, right? About listening in layers.
It does, yeah.
This sounds very Zen-like.
It is. It's think about listening to a song for the first time. You're not going to catch all the words, all the lyrics, all the nuances right away, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with English.
So we're listening to the same thing multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay, and what are the layers?
Well, so on the first pass, you're just listening for the gist. Who's talking? What are they talking about?
Right.
And then on the second listen, you try to pick out keywords that'll give you more context.
Okay.
And then on the third listen, that's when you can really zero in on the tricky bits, the connected speech, maybe those contractions you couldn't quite pick out the first time.
Okay, it's kind of like peeling back an onion, right?
Exactly.
You get a little more information every time.
You got it.
Cool. We actually have a dialogue example in the masterclass that we can use to try this.
Perfect.
Audio plays. Hey, do you want to grab some coffee? Yeah, but let me finish this first. Cool, I'll meet you in 10.
Okay.
So how would we use this layered listening for this little coffee shop conversation?
Okay, so on that first listen, you're getting, okay, two people are going to get coffee.
Yeah.
Easy.
Easy.
Then on that second layer, you might pick out keywords like coffee, maybe finish this, and then like 10 minutes.
Okay.
So now you're getting a better picture of what's going on.
All right.
And then finally, on the third listen, you can really zoom in. Like, okay, do you want it?
Yeah.
How are they using those contractions and reductions?
Okay. Yeah, that makes it much less intimidating.
Yeah.
Breaking it down like that. Now, what about speaking faster? How do we do that without sounding like,
Yeah.
some kind of robot?
Like a robot reading a dictionary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well, this masterclass talks a lot about sounding natural and fluent, not just talking faster.
Right.
Like you said, we don't want to sacrifice clarity just to sound fast.
Yeah, so are there specific techniques for this?
Well, remember all those contractions and reductions we talked about?
Yeah.
Those are really important for speaking fluently, too.
So instead of saying, like, I'm going to the store, I should say, I'm going to go to the store.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Huh.
And it might feel a little weird at first,
It does.
but I promise it just makes your English sound smoother and more effortless.
Okay. But how do we actually get used to doing that?
Right. Well, that's where that shadowing technique comes in.
Okay.
So you are going to be like a vocal chameleon. You listen to a native speaker.
Yeah. Say a phrase or a sentence. You pause it, and then you try to repeat exactly what they said,
Okay.
matching their pronunciation, intonation, and speed.
So like, what are you doing? I should say more like, what you doing?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And you can start slow, and then as you get more comfortable, you can speed it up.
That's cool. Are there any other techniques we can use?
Yeah. Another one is linking.
Okay.
So like native speakers, we just do it naturally, but it's something that you might have to practice consciously if you're learning.
Okay.
So like, for instance, not at all often becomes not at all.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the tan sound from not blends with that vowel sound of at.
Oh, that's so subtle. Wow.
It is.
I want to try a little fast reading challenge. Can I?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So the source material has the sentence, would you like to go to the movies later?
Yeah.
How would a native speaker actually say that?
Probably something like, would ya? Like, go to the movies later.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Okay, so I'm noticing would you becomes would ya, to is like ta, and the like disappears before movies.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's all about those smooth transitions.
Yeah. Okay. I can already tell I need to practice that one. We've been practicing here in this nice, perfect little world, right?
Right.
How do we take this into the real world where there's all kinds of accents and people talking at all different speeds?
That is the real challenge, right? Because the real world is full of all these variations, different accents, slang, speaking styles.
Yeah.
It's really like taking what you learned in the classroom and then...
throwing yourself into the deep end.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that feeling.
Yeah.
It was like scary. So what advice does the masterclass have for us for bridging that gap?
Well, I mean, really, it's about exposure and practice.
Okay.
The more you immerse yourself in the language, the more prepared you'll be to handle those real-world variations.
What are some good ways to get that real-world practice?
Well, they talk about watching TV shows and movies.
Oh.
You can start with the subtitles on to get the gist, and then challenge yourself.
Right.
Turn the subtitles off. See how much you can understand.
Yeah, I find even watching with English subtitles like helps me
Yeah.
pick up stuff I might not have noticed otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's podcasts,
Okay.
which are great because you can adjust the speed.
Right.
You can start slow, work your way up.
What about actually talking with native speakers?
Well, that's the best practice you can get, right?
Right.
Find language exchange partners, maybe join some groups online, or even,
Yeah.
if you're brave enough,
Yeah.
strike up conversations with people you meet.
I remember I was so scared to talk to native speakers when I was learning English,
Yeah.
but I realized pretty quickly most people are really patient and they appreciate the effort you're making.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it really is about just building that confidence and not being afraid to mess up.
For sure. Don't be afraid to ask people to slow down or repeat themselves.
Yeah.
People are happy to help.
Yeah. So we really need to embrace that messiness, right? It's
Yeah.
going to be messy. It's not going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
Now, the masterclass has one final challenge for us before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
Okay.
They want us to imagine we're hanging out with friends, and they ask, hey, deal up for a movie tonight.
Fun.
Okay, I'm ready for this challenge. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Audio plays. Hey, you're up for a movie tonight. Dunno. What's playing? That new sci-fi one looks cool. All right, let me check the show times.
Oh, casual, fast English.
So what techniques are we hearing in this?
Okay, well, right away we hear that contraction, ya,
Right.
instead of you, and then what's playing. It combines like what is and playing into one little chunk.
I noticed they're saying do know instead of don't know, and then
Yeah.
let me instead of let me.
It's amazing how those little things make such a big difference.
Yeah, it's like a little puzzle.
It is.
All these pieces, you can even hear that linking, like looks cool becomes looks cool. That's so cool. Okay, so now the challenge is to imagine how we would respond
Yes.
using everything we've talked about.
Exactly. And there's no one right answer.
Right.
It's about using what you've learned and seeing how you can apply it to this conversation.
So we're leaving you with that challenge for now, dear listener. How would you respond to this invitation to go to the movies? We'll explore this more in the next part of our deep dive.
You know, it's crazy to think about how all these like tiny little things, the contractions, the schwa sound linking,
Yeah.
it all adds up to make English sound so fast.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, it's not really about speed, is it?
No, not really. It's more about understanding each other.
Right, being able to communicate.
Exactly.
I think that's easy to forget when you get so caught up in like the rules and the technical stuff.
It's easy to get bogged down in that.
Yeah.
And forget why we're even learning the language.
Totally. I like that this masterclass really focuses on that, like the human element of language.
Yeah.
It does.
Mhm.
It gives some good advice about how to turn all this stuff we're talking about into like real fluency.
That's what I'm curious about, because I feel like I've hit walls so many times where I'm just like, I'm not getting any better. Like, what's the secret to getting over those plateaus?
Well, it's not really a secret. I think a lot of people just, they don't do it,
Yeah.
but it's practice.
Yeah.
It's consistent practice.
Okay, so not just like cramming.
Right, not just cramming a bunch of words and grammar rules,
Right, yeah.
but really making it a habit.
Okay, yeah. So what would a good practice routine look like? Say I'm like just starting out.
Well, I mean, even if you could just do like 15, 20 minutes a day of focused listening.
Okay.
That's huge. It could be podcasts, TV shows, whatever you enjoy.
Right.
You could even just listen to conversations happening around you.
Right. That's such a good, like, easy tip, you know?
It is. It is.
You don't need anything special for that.
Just like go to a coffee shop, listen to people talking.
Yeah. Exactly. What about for speaking practice?
Speaking practice is a little tougher.
Yeah.
Because you have to actually,
Find someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Right?
But there's a lot of groups online.
Uh-huh.
Language exchange apps and things like that.
Yeah.
You could even record yourself speaking and then listen back.
I used to do that.
Yeah.
It's so helpful.
Right. You catch all these little mistakes.
It is a little cringy, though.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But it's like having your own little language coach.
It is. And you said it earlier, too. It's okay to make mistakes.
Absolutely. That's how we learn.
That's how we learn, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the shadowing technique. We kind of touched on it earlier. Can you explain a little bit more about like how that works and why it's so good?
It's basically karaoke for language learning.
Okay.
You listen to a native speaker,
Yeah.
try to repeat exactly what they're saying,
Okay.
matching their rhythm, intonation, everything.
So it's like a workout for your mouth?
It is. Getting it to do all those weird sounds.
Exactly. And you could do it with anything.
Oh, okay.
Like a podcast, a song,
Oh, cool.
a scene from a movie.
That sounds fun. What are some tips for making practice in general more interesting?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people think of it as a chore, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to find stuff that you're actually interested in.
Right.
Like if you love to cook,
Yeah.
watch cooking shows in English. If you're a sports fan,
Yeah.
listen to sports commentary.
It's so true. Like when it's something I like, it feels like I'm like not even trying.
Right, because you're actually paying attention.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, just find ways to connect your interests with language learning.
Right. It shouldn't be boring.
No, it should be fun.
Yeah. Even when we are enjoying it, I feel like we all hit those like plateaus.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Well, I think it's important to remember that progress isn't always like a straight line, You're going to have times when you feel like you're rocketing forward and times where you feel like you're just stuck.
Yeah, like going backwards almost.
Right. And that's totally normal.
Yeah.
But you can't give up.
Right.
Just keep practicing and trust the process.
It's like when you're working out, right?
It is. It is.
You hit those plateaus. It's like, I'm doing all this and nothing's happening.
Right. But just like with fitness, consistency is key.
Okay.
Just keep at it.
And celebrate those like little wins, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get focused on this big like end goal
Yeah.
and forget how far you've come.
Right. It's like looking at old pictures of yourself like, oh my God.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
make so much progress.
Yeah. And that actually brings us to like confidence. Right.
It does.
Because when you can understand and be understood,
Uh-huh.
you feel more confident. You feel more like able to.
You're not just a passive observer. You're an active participant.
Yeah. A whole new world opens up, basically.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of technical stuff.
We have.
And resources and even like the emotional and social benefits of being fluent.
Uh-huh.
I know this masterclass has one last challenge for us before we wrap up this section of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, remember that movie night situation we talked about?
Yeah.
Our friends invited us to go to a movie.
Yeah, they asked you up for a movie tonight.
And we heard all the back and forth about,
Yep.
you know, what's playing and everything.
What time? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now the challenge is, what would you say? There's no script this time.
No, I like it.
Just like, what would you say?
It's like they're saying, okay, here are all the tools. Now you go.
Exactly, yeah.
Make something beautiful.
Yeah.
It's your turn.
Yeah. And I think that's what this whole deep dive is about, right?
It is, yeah.
It's not about memorizing.
Yeah.
It's about being able to actually use the language.
It's about empowering you to use the language.
Yeah, yeah. So, dear listener, that's the challenge for you. Put yourself back in that situation.
Yep.
What would you say? How would you use these techniques we've talked about?
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Just like, what's your gut reaction?
Yeah.
Have fun with it.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to try.
Okay.
So if my friends asked if I was up for a movie, I might say, yeah, totally. What are we thinking of watching?
Perfect.
I'm using a contraction.
You are.
I'm keeping it casual.
You are.
And I'm expressing enthusiasm.
Yes, you are.
I love it. And I'm already feeling more confident just thinking about,
I love that.
you know, using all this stuff.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? Is finding your own voice.
Yeah.
And just being comfortable.
Awesome. So, dear listener, we want you to find your voice.
Yes.
Experiment, try new things, push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit.
And remember, fluency is not like an end point.
Right.
It's an ongoing journey.
It is, yeah.
Full of ups and downs. And,
Yeah.
and it's all about connection, you know?
Right. It is, yeah.
Connecting with other people.
Okay, I think this is a good place to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and wrap up our deep dive into speaking and understanding fast English. I'm still thinking about that movie night challenge.
Yeah,
I like how it makes us actually, like, use what we learned.
it is. It's a good way to, like, bridge the gap
Yeah.
between the ideas and actually putting it into practice.
Totally. It reminds us this isn't just about, like, memorizing rules. It's
Yeah.
about, like, using language to actually talk with people.
Right, like language is about connection.
Yeah. This deep dive has been awesome.
Yeah,
Can we do a quick recap of what we talked about?
yeah, for sure.
Just to make sure I've got all the like, key takeaways?
Okay, well, I think the first thing to remember is that speed is just one part of being fluent.
Okay.
You don't want to just talk fast.
Yeah.
You got to be clear.
Yeah.
And you got to sound natural.
Right. So it's like a balance.
Exactly.
Okay. And one way to do that is using all those contractions and reductions.
Yeah, definitely. Those are super important.
Yeah.
They really make your English flow.
Now, what about chunking?
Oh, yeah, chunking's huge.
Yeah.
Training yourself to hear those chunks of words instead of every single word.
It's like we're upgrading our brains.
It is. It's like a software update
Yeah.
for your ears.
That's a good way to put it. And then we have that layered listening approach. First the gist, then the keywords, then all that like subtle details.
Right, like connected speech and all that.
Okay, and then for speaking, we've got that shadowing technique.
Ah, yes, shadowing.
That was really cool. Like having a pronunciation coach in your ear.
Exactly. And you can do it with anything.
Right, any material that interests you.
Yeah.
So we've got all the tools. Now what's the secret to like putting this all together? What's the magic formula?
Well, again, it's not really a secret. It's consistent practice.
Oh.
Finding things that you enjoy.
Right. It should be fun.
It should be fun, yeah. It shouldn't feel like a chore.
Totally. Because when it's fun, you actually want to do it.
Exactly. And you'll learn faster that way, too.
Yeah. So like find things that you're into, like movies, podcasts.
Yeah. Or connect with other people who are learning.
Yeah.
You can all practice together.
Now we all know fluency isn't like you don't just arrive there one day.
No, it's a journey
Yeah.
with lots of twists and turns.
Yeah. And we're going to mess up along the way.
Oh, for sure.
You just got to keep going.
Absolutely. Celebrate the wins and learn from the mistakes.
I think that's a great way to wrap up our deep dive.
Yeah.
So, dear listener, hopefully this has given you some new ideas for how to take your English to the next level.
Yeah. Keep practicing and keep exploring.
And keep connecting with people.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, language is about connecting.
So true. That's it for our deep dive into speaking and understanding fast English.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
Ever feel like you're just wading through a sea of words?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know that feeling.
But today, we're diving into the deep end.
That's right.
We're going to explore some advanced English vocabulary, 15 words to be exact.
Okay.
And they're all from this book, Test Your English Vocabulary.
Sounds like a challenge.
Well, it's not about memorizing definitions or anything like that.
Oh, good.
We're going to uncover their hidden depths and how these words connect to the bigger picture.
I like that. It's fascinating how these words can really unlock a deeper understanding of human behavior and communication and even our perception of time.
Absolutely. And to make it a little easier, we'll group our 15 words into themes.
Okay.
First up, the art of communication,
All right.
or sometimes the lack of it.
Right.
Let's start with loquacious. I'm sure you've met someone like this. They could talk a blue streak.
Yeah.
Holding court at a party, even if no one else gets a word in edgewise.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's our loquacious friend.
Yeah.
It's interesting to contrast that with someone who's laconic. They might only say a few words, but those words carry weight. Think of a seasoned judge delivering a verdict. Just brief, to the point, no wasted syllables.
Oh, I like that example. Now, have you ever noticed how some people use big words to actually avoid clear communication?
All the time.
That's where obfuscate comes in.
Right.
It's like they're trying to build a wall of jargon to hide behind.
It happens a lot, especially in fields like, law or finance.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's unintentional. They're so used to speaking a certain way, they don't realize it's confusing to others.
Right.
But other times it's a deliberate tactic, make things seem more complex than they are.
Yeah, it's like they think if they use enough fancy words, no one will question what they're actually saying.
Right.
But we're smarter than that.
Absolutely.
We're going to see right through that obfuscation and get to the heart of the matter.
And sometimes the most straightforward language is the most powerful.
Okay, enough about communication. Let's talk about behavior. Our next group of words explores some interesting character types we all encounter.
Okay.
The sycophant, the ostentatious, and the austere. Let's start with the sycophant.
All right.
Oof. Just the word makes me cringe. You know that person who's always showering someone with insincere praise just to get on their good side?
Yeah, the classic yes man, always trying to curry favor. It's interesting to think about why someone might behave this way. Could it be a lack of confidence or maybe even a manipulative strategy to gain power?
Oh, it makes you wonder, right? Now let's swing to the opposite end of the spectrum with ostentatious.
Okay.
This is our friend who loves to flaunt their wealth or success.
Oh, yeah.
Think of the person who always has to have the latest designer clothes, the flashiest car, always name-dropping their fancy vacations.
Yeah, it's all about outward appearances, often masking a deeper need for validation. It makes you think about our society's obsession with status symbols and material possessions, doesn't it?
Totally. Now, in contrast to the ostentatious, we have the austere. This describes someone who lives a simple, unadorned life.
Right.
They're not interested in flashy displays or material wealth. Think of a minimalist who values experiences over possessions.
That's a fascinating counterpoint to the ostentatious lifestyle. In a world that constantly bombards us with messages about what we should want and need, the austere individual chooses a different path.
And I think the word propensity ties all three of these words together nicely.
How so?
Well, it refers to our natural tendencies or inclinations. We might have a propensity for flattery, for extravagance, for simplicity. These tendencies shape our behavior in all sorts of ways.
Exactly. We all have propensities, and recognizing them in ourselves and others can be key to understanding why we act the way we do.
Now let's shift gears and get a little philosophical. Our next group of words deals with time and the intangible.
Okay.
Ephemeral, ubiquitous, and the ineffable.
All right.
Have you ever experienced something beautiful but fleeting, like a stunning sunset that disappears in minutes?
Oh, yeah.
That's the essence of ephemeral.
It's about recognizing the beauty in transience. In those moments that are precious because they don't last.
Mm.
In a world that often values permanence and stability, the ephemeral reminds us to cherish the fleeting moments.
That's beautifully put. Now, on the flip side, we have ubiquitous, which describes something that's absolutely everywhere. It used to be rare to see someone using a smartphone, but now they're ubiquitous. You see them on every street corner and every cafe.
Yeah, it's incredible how quickly things can shift from novel to commonplace.
Right.
The ubiquity of technology, for example, has had a profound impact on our lives, for better or for worse.
And finally, we come to ineffable, which might be my favorite word of the bunch.
Oh, why is that?
Well, it describes something so profound, so awe-inspiring, that words simply cannot capture it. Have you ever had an experience like that, where language just failed you?
Absolutely. Sometimes the most profound experiences are the ones that transcend language, like the feeling of standing on a mountaintop overlooking this vast landscape or witnessing the birth of a child. These are moments that defy easy description.
It makes you realize the limitations of language, doesn't it? There are some things that words simply can't convey.
And yet that doesn't stop us from trying, from searching for the words that come closest to expressing the inexpressible.
Well said. Ready to tackle our next set of words.
Hit me with it.
This group focuses on actions and reactions.
Yeah.
Perfunctory, temerity, and recant. We'll start with perfunctory.
Okay.
You know those days when you're just going through the motions,
Yeah.
doing something out of habit or obligation, but without any real heart?
Yeah.
That's perfunctory in action.
We all have those days, right? The key is to recognize when we're stuck in a rut and to make an effort to infuse our actions with more intention and meaning.
So true. Now let's talk about temerity.
Right.
This word is all about boldness, audacity, even a little bit of recklessness. It's about having the guts to do something daring, even if it goes against the grain.
Right.
Have you ever witnessed an act of pure temerity?
Yes. Actually, I recall a time when a junior researcher presented this groundbreaking theory that challenged, the established thinking in the field.
Wow.
It was a bold move considering the potential backlash from senior colleagues.
Wow, that takes courage.
It does.
That makes you wonder, what's the line between temerity and foolishness? I guess it depends on the outcome, right?
I suppose it does. But sometimes those acts of temerity are the ones that lead to true innovation and progress.
And finally, we have recant.
Okay.
This is about taking back your words, admitting you were wrong, often in a public way.
Right.
It could be a politician retracting a statement, a scientist revising a theory, or someone simply owning up to a mistake.
It's a powerful act, recanting.
Yeah.
It requires humility, a willingness to acknowledge our fallibility. In a world where people are often afraid to admit they're wrong, recanting can be a sign of true strength and integrity.
It's about putting truth above ego, which can be a tough thing to do.
It can.
All right, ready to move on to our last group of words.
Let's do it.
This one's all about dreamers and realists, and it centers around the word quixotic.
Quixotic. Named after the idealistic knight, Don Quixote.
Right.
He's famous for tilting at windmills, mistaking them for giants. It's a wonderful example of how idealism and imagination can sometimes clash with reality.
Exactly. The word quixotic captures that blend of idealism, romanticism, and perhaps a touch of naivete.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the balance between chasing dreams and being grounded in reality.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? On the one hand, we need idealism to inspire us, to push us beyond the limits of what seems possible. But on the other hand, we need pragmatism to navigate the complexities of the real world and make progress towards those ideals.
So true.
Yeah.
And sometimes those seemingly impossible quixotic goals can lead to unexpected breakthroughs.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot between dreaming big and taking practical steps to make those dreams a reality. What about you? Do you have any quixotic goals you're pursuing?
That's a great question. I'm going to have to ponder that one for a bit.
Okay, but in the meantime.
So, any thoughts on those quixotic goals? Did any come to mind during that little pause?
I was thinking about how even outlandish goals can spark innovation. Like, if no one had ever had that crazy idea to fly, well, we wouldn't have airplanes, right?
It's true. Sometimes it's not about reaching that exact vision, but what we discover on the way there.
Exactly. And speaking of journeys, it strikes me how the words we've been discussing, they're not just isolated units of meaning. They're part of a larger system.
Right.
A network of interconnected ideas?
That's like a constellation.
Oh, I like that.
Each star adds to the overall beauty and significance of the pattern.
It's true. We've been focusing on individual words, but it's the way we use them, the context, the nuances. That's what brings language to life.
Exactly. Take a word like austere, for instance.
Okay.
It can describe a monk's simple life, but also the starkness of a desert landscape. Or even like a government's harsh economic policies. Same word, but vastly different connotations depending on how it's used. It reminds me of how a single musical note can evoke different emotions based on the melody and the surrounding notes.
That's a fantastic analogy. And just like a composer carefully chooses notes to create a specific mood, skilled communicators select words to evoke feelings and convey precise meaning.
This makes me think about the importance of expanding our vocabulary, not just for intellectual reasons, but to become more effective communicators.
Right.
The more words we have at our disposal, the more precisely we can express ourselves.
It's like having a wider range of colors on an artist's palette. A limited palette can still create beautiful art, but imagine the possibilities when you have every shade and hue imaginable.
And not only can a rich vocabulary enhance our own communication, but it also helps us understand the nuances of what others are saying.
Absolutely. Think about how, politicians or advertisers use carefully chosen words to influence our opinions and behaviors.
It's true.
The more we understand the subtle ways language can be used, the better equipped we are to critically evaluate the messages we're bombarded with every day.
It's about becoming more aware of the power of words, both for good and for bad, but also appreciating the beauty and complexity of language,
Right.
how it can be used to inspire, to connect, to create art.
And that brings us back to the word ineffable.
Okay.
It describes those experiences that transcend language.
Right.
Even though some things defy description, that doesn't mean we should stop trying to express them.
I agree.
It's the effort, the reaching for meaning that enriches our understanding.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
Even if we can't perfectly capture an experience in words, the act of trying can help us process it, make sense of it.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those struggles to find the right words lead to the most profound insights.
It's like those moments when a poet struggles to find the perfect rhyme or metaphor.
Yeah.
The result is often a line that's even more beautiful and evocative because of the effort that went into it.
Speaking of poetry, I'm curious, do you have a favorite word? One that you find particularly delightful or thought-provoking?
Oh, that's a tough one. There are so many. But one that's been on my mind lately is serendipity. I love the way it captures those unexpected delights that life throws our way.
Right?
Those moments of fortunate coincidence that lead to new discoveries or connections.
Serendipity is a beautiful word. It reminds me of how sometimes the most meaningful experiences happen when we're not actively seeking them out, when we're open to the unexpected twists and turns of life.
Exactly. It encourages us to embrace a sense of curiosity and wonder, to be open to the possibility that something amazing could be just around the corner.
And who knows, maybe our deep dive today will lead to some serendipitous discoveries for our listeners. They might stumble upon a new favorite word or make an unexpected connection between these words and their own lives.
I certainly hope so. After all, language is about so much more than just definitions. It's about expanding our perspectives, connecting with others, and exploring the richness of human experience.
Now, before we get too philosophical, I think it would be helpful to bring some of these words to life with some concrete examples.
Absolutely. It's one thing to understand a word in the abstract, but it's another to see how it's actually used in context.
For instance, we talked about obfuscate earlier.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how might you see that word used in, say, a legal setting?
Oh, that's an interesting one. In law, you might see obfuscate used to describe a defendant's attempts to hide assets or mislead the court. Or it could be used to criticize a lawyer's dense and confusing legal arguments.
So they're intentionally trying to make things difficult to understand.
It seems that way sometimes.
But as we've been saying, the more we understand these words and the ways they can be used, the better equipped we are to see through those attempts at obfuscation.
Exactly. And speaking of context, I think it'd be interesting to explore the etymology of some of these words.
Oh, yeah.
Trace their origins back to ancient languages and historical events.
I love that idea. Etymology can be like a detective story, uncovering hidden layers of meaning and revealing the fascinating journeys these words have taken over time.
For example, did you know that quixotic comes from the Spanish novel Don Quixote? It's amazing to think how a single literary character can inspire a word that becomes part of our everyday language.
That's true.
carrying with it the spirit of idealism and romanticism.
It's like these words become vessels, carrying centuries of history and cultural meaning within them.
And by delving into their etymology, we can unlock those hidden layers of meaning and gain an even deeper appreciation for the words we use.
It's like going on a linguistic treasure hunt. But instead of digging for gold, we're unearthing the stories and cultural influences that have shaped our language.
And those stories can be just as valuable as any treasure. They remind us that language is a living, breathing entity that's constantly evolving, shaped by the people who use it and the world around them.
You know, this conversation has really sparked my curiosity.
Yeah, mine too.
I'm eager to delve even deeper into the world of language and explore more of its hidden treasures.
Me too. And I have a feeling our listeners are ready to continue this journey with us.
I think so too.
Should we take another short pause and come back for a final round of exploration?
That sounds like a perfect plan. We'll be back soon to wrap up our deep dive into advanced English vocabulary. Welcome back to our deep dive into advanced English vocabulary.
Glad to be back.
It's been such a fascinating journey exploring all these nuances and hidden depths of these words.
Yeah, I agree. It really makes you realize how much richness and complexity there is in language.
Absolutely. And we haven't even touched on like idioms and slang,
Oh, that's right.
which adds another layer of color and expressiveness to language.
Imagine trying to explain like kick the bucket or spill the beans to someone learning English for the first time.
Oh, that's a good one.
It'd be like trying to teach them a secret code.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And every language has its own unique set of idioms and colloquialisms, right?
Right. It really reflects the history and the culture and even the sense of humor of a language.
Makes you realize how much language is tied to our identity,
Yeah.
both as individuals and as members of a particular community.
And it highlights the importance of like cultural exchange and understanding.
Yeah.
The more we learn about other languages and their nuances, the more we expand our own worldview.
Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something we haven't really talked about yet, the role of grammar and syntax in effective communication.
Ah, yes, grammar and syntax. While we've been focusing on individual words, it's the way we arrange those words, the structure of our sentences. That's what allows us to convey complex thoughts and ideas.
It's like building a house, right?
Yeah.
You need strong, well-crafted bricks, but you also need a solid framework to hold them together.
Precisely. Grammar and syntax provide that framework. They ensure that our message is clear and coherent and easy to understand.
It's amazing to think about how even a slight change in word order or punctuation can completely alter the meaning of a sentence.
A misplaced comma can lead to all sorts of ambiguity and confusion.
So true. And that brings us to another important point, the importance of being precise and intentional with our language choices.
Especially in written communication where we don't have, like, the tone of voice or body language to help convey our meaning.
Exactly. It makes you realize how much responsibility we have as communicators to use language carefully and thoughtfully.
And it highlights the importance of editing and revising our work to make sure our message is clear, accurate, and free of errors.
Well said. Now, as we come to the end of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a few key takeaways.
Okay.
First and foremost, language is constantly evolving.
It's true. New words are being coined all the time. Old words take on new meanings.
It's like a river,
Yeah.
always flowing and changing shape.
Which means we need to be lifelong learners. Always curious about language and how it's being used in the world around us.
I also want to encourage our listeners to embrace the power of language,
Absolutely.
to see it as a tool for connection, for creativity, for making a difference.
Words have the power to inspire, to inform, to persuade, to heal.
But they can also be used to harm, to deceive, to manipulate. So it's crucial that we use them responsibly and ethically.
Couldn't agree more.
And finally, language is a source of endless fascination and delight. There's always something new to discover, some hidden meaning to uncover, some unexpected connection to make.
That's one of the most beautiful things about it.
So keep exploring, keep learning, keep playing with words, and most importantly, never stop being curious about the incredible power of language.
Well said. Until next time, keep diving deep into the world of words.